Hey, it's JJVirgin, and welcome to the JJVirgin Lifestyle Show, where we'll connect with some of the coolest people in the world. Plus, I give you tips that you can put into fast action to up-level your health and your life. Now, today's show, we're doing the bridge here between mindset and health. We're going to put them all together with my guest, Susan Levin. Susan's a native New Yorker, went to Harvard. She was working as an attorney. And then her son got diagnosed with autism, and everything shifted for her. And she is going to take us through her journey from grief, despair, and what tactics she used to be able to pull herself, her son, and her family out of this. And what's so interesting is as I'm interviewing her, so many of these things were the same things that I used with my son when we were in the ICU. So these things that are so specific have universal strategies that you'll be able to use to up-level your health and your life as well. So today's guest is Susan Levin. All right, so let's do it. Susan Levin, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here with me today.
Thanks, JJ.
So this is a subject I've been living with, so I was very excited to have you on the show. And one of the things that I've been teaching for the last couple of years after I spent 4.5 months in the ICU and since then been dealing with a son with a brain injury is that you have to practice extreme self-care, that you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. So I know that's a big part of how you've been through this, but let's just dive in. As a mother with a child of autism, what's the hardest thing?
Well, I think it's being an autism mom is really, I think, just an intensified version of being a mom in terms of stress. Because I know a lot of moms who are not autism moms, and we have really similar kind of experiences. So I think the hardest thing, and again, I think this applies to a lot of moms who are not necessarily autism moms, but for me, it was the loneliness. I really felt kind of terminally unique. And I'm a very social person. My husband and I are very social. And when my son's autism got really acute, where it became you really couldn't not see it, we became very isolated and stopped kind of hanging around with our normal friends and their quote unquote normal lives. And that was really tough to feel isolated. And I feel lonely, and also just kind of be in the house with this child who really was very different. And I didn't really know how to relate to him. And some of his behaviors were just, autism is wild. Kids do wild stuff in autism. And so I felt very trapped. And again, and also kind of uncomfortable and ashamed of my kid. And so there was this tangible loneliness of not being with other people because I didn't want to be around other people with my kid doing weird things. But there was also a thing about this shame that I felt that I wasn't a better mom, and that I couldn't sort of make him be better. So, and again, I don't think that's I think most moms go through that feeling of being trapped.
I'll never forget, Susan. I have a son. My son with the brain injury has also got bipolar. And I remember being in, I guess they were like in kindergarten and first grade, and he always struggled, and especially in situations like Halloween, like anything that was out of the normal really put him over the edge. And I remember this one mother like looking at me like, couldn't I control my son, and judging? And I was just like, I remember thinking, you know what, you'll probably have that kid in high school that goes off, does drugs. And, I mean, don't judge glass houses. So
yeah. And you're judging yourself too. I mean, I think that's the hard thing, is like part of the prison that I was trapped in was this self-judgment. And again, universal mom experience. Why can't I be more like, Joni with her perfect kid, and so that's a really tough place to be. And again, with autism, and these days, autism is epidemic, but so is, ADHD, and so are so many of these other
Oh my God.
developments.
Well, I mean, look at just look at emotional disorders,
Right.
26% of the population. I grew up with a brother who was schizophrenic. No one talked about it. I mean, we need to talk about these things. And I think the biggest crisis facing all of us is isolation, just like you brought up. I know it's been the most difficult part of what I've been going through with my son and what he's been going through. And so, I know we were going to talk about some of the strategies with how you got your son through this, but I'm more interested in the strategies of how you're getting through this.
Yeah, well, that's really my focus too. I can tell you, JJ, because I see moms all the time dealing with their kids, at the grocery store, at the library, at the school parking lot, at the airport, and I see moms, and I don't think I'm completely projecting here, that they seem to be so uncomfortable and so unhappy. And I see them talking to their kids in ways that I know if I were talking to my kid that way, I'd feel bad about me, yelling at them, short-tempered, impatient, and kind of looking around. Is anyone seeing how I'm talking to my kid? And, that's really kind of where I was. And so when I see these women, as much as I feel for the children, I really feel for the mothers. And of course, that's my story, is of being trapped in that way and self-judging in that way, and then coming out of it. So that's really my mission now. I think autism is going to be here. And that means that all of us are going to be affected by it. And one of my really big realizations is that we're all affected. And there's a child with autism in the family. Every single member of that family has special needs. Absolutely. And the mom is kind of the center of all that. And she's in the trenches usually. She's the one who's kind of really facing and dealing and coping with this stuff every day. So the moms, to me, are a huge, huge identified patient.
So when I was standing the first night in the hospital, the first full night in the hospital, I remember standing there in the ICU, and I'm all gloved up, and I've got a mask and this gown, and I'm looking at my son, and I'm thinking, I have to be 110% healthy. Like, there's no margin for error here. I have to, I have to get my sleep. I have to handle my stress. Like, in order to pull this one off, like, I cannot get sick. And, I think about these women, because I just saw one, Susan, in the airport, and it broke my heart. Her little girl she had her in the bathroom with her. Obviously, I heard this teeny little voice, a really young girl, and I guess she'd splashed some pee on her shoes, and her mom lost it. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I just wanted to grab them both, and tell them it was going to be okay. Because you just know how stressed, we're just stretched so thin, and then that final thing just blows you up. So what do you do to be able to navigate these waters? How do you take care of yourself?
The first and most important thing is to really get it that my well-being is going to have a huge impact, just like you just said, JJ, on my kids' well-being. And, it's really hard to really connect those dots because, as moms, we're like, well, it's my kid. I have to take care of my kid. I come last, my kid comes first, and that's it. But for me, I had kind of a pivotal moment one day when I met a woman, and her child had textbook autism, no eye contact, rocking, swaying, completely autistic child. And she had fully recovered him using this method. And so she kind of had what I wanted. She was my expert. And we were talking, and she said to me, Susan, if you don't take care of yourself, you will not be able to take care of Ben. Ben's my son. And, Ben was diagnosed when he was 5 with autism. And at that time he was completely autistic. And, there's something about hearing an expert who has what you want say this thing that a million other people can say it. But she spoke to me because she was me, but she was not me. She was where I wanted. And
she was the after.
That's right. Exactly. And I knew I was the before. And it was like that penny dropped, and I said, okay, And I made that decision, and everything else flowed from there. And my son's done really well, but and I don't know that there's a causal relationship, but there is an absolute direct relationship between me taking care of myself and really being available to him, and being able to be
Yeah.
effective in researching all these methods and keeping journals and doing all the stuff you have to do if you want your kid to really make progress. So that was the first thing. And then in terms of sort of tactical, one of the most, well, I would say the single most important thing I did was to start talking about what I was feeling inside, about my grief, because I had a vision of who my child was going to be and what my family was going to be. And, it was definitely not that, I can tell you. So the sadness I felt, the disappointment, my fears about the future, about our financial life, about my marriage, because my husband and I were not coping well in our marriage. We were arguing all the time about my daughter, because Ben has a little sister, Alina, and I was really worried about her. And the impact of autism on her. And so to talk about my fears, to talk about my rage, why had this happened to me and us and my kid, and to talk also about, was there hope, because I was really hopeless, and to talk, to get into community with other autism moms. And I did that, and I found other mothers, and we started to talk, and I found groups, and I got online, and I started talking. And actually, my book, Unlocked, emerged because I was blogging. That was a tool that I used. I blogged almost, I would say, every single night for 4 years. And it wasn't like I was trying to get people to hear me. I just vomited this stuff every night.
You just need to get it out.
Exactly, like up and out. And then I could go hit the ground running the next day and be there for Ben. But I needed to be with other women who I knew wouldn't judge me, wouldn't judge Ben, and really understood what it's like to have a child who doesn't look at you, doesn't talk to you, doesn't hug you, goes limp in your arms when you hold them, doesn't, call you mommy, all these, heartbreaking things. And, but without the judgment, because even my good friends, who didn't have my experience, they didn't get it. And whether they judged me or not, I don't know. They probably didn't, but I judged me. So I always felt they were judging. And so community was huge. And then there was sort of, for me, I had to start taking care of myself on a very practical level. And that meant my nutrition and my spiritual life. So the nutrition piece, I had chronic pain, chronic fatigue, chronic bloat, like gas. I'm a petite woman, and I've been, for many years, very, very petite. But I looked like I was pregnant because my foods were wrong. I wasn't eating too much necessarily, but my foods weren't right. And so I had to start thinking about myself. And as I went along and used nutrition, which was a huge, huge game changer for my son, I started applying it also to myself. And, amazing. I mean, probably not amazing to you, JJ, because you know all this stuff. But for me, I mean, I was a lawyer and I had no idea any of this stuff.
I mean, isn't this silly? You're like a Harvard grad, totally educated. Like, what should we learn in school first? How to manage your finances, how to have great relationships, how to eat well, how to move well, in reality, yeah, it's crazy.
I learned how to change my choices, and so I lost I don't have any fatigue. I don't have that bloat. I lost like 5 to 8 pounds. So I didn't even do like a lot of exercise. It was the food. It was the choices. And also chronic fatigue, and my chronic pain went away because I was inflamed. So I started learning about inflammation and, like alkalizing foods and all this stuff. And so and then when I say the spiritual stuff, for me, that had to do with like learning how to connect with myself. And a lot of that happened through the community, through talking and getting back in touch with myself. But then for me, I also started experimenting with meditating, sitting quietly. One of the things that was it's such a little thing, but it's such a big thing for me in terms of how effective it was, is Dr. Andrew Weil's breathing technique. And, I call it the 847 because I kind of do it backwards. I start with the exhale. I don't know why. I just always have. But that was something that really helped me just calm at least twice a day, just to do this little, like literally 2-minute breathing thing. And it helped me.
I love this. I got to tell you, Susan, I was interviewing, gosh, was it Jonathan Fields, I think, who's just lovely and in New York too. And he talked about having a toolbox. And I do this in my Miracle Mindset Academy. I have what I call mindset hacks. And it can be the breathing exercise you just described, meditation, tapping, great music. But what you're just talking about are those interrupts when the day gets overwhelming. So before you lose it, you've got a way to process it. And that blogging too, I think, is such a key takeaway because it allowed you to get it out. And you didn't even mean to be helping other people, but you did. So it's a win-win.
Right. And having a foundation, I started my day with myself before I would go off and work with Ben. So I would have a time in the morning, that was just for me. And that was like critical. And then at the end of my day, I would have the blogging and just, again, just get it all out. So learning these things, it didn't happen overnight. I need to say that. And I still don't feel like I'm even a pro, like these are things that I practice.
Yeah, I don't know if we ever get to be a pro at that,
Yeah.
A pro at life. I'm not sure if that happens.
No, and I think that mom cycle of like beating yourself up bloody, for being human. Like even this morning, I was thinking, my daughter's 11 and she's difficult. She's going through middle school yucks and I lost it with her this morning. And I felt terrible, and she went off to school and I could tell she didn't feel good. And and there came out the sledgehammer. I was beating myself up like, oh, how could you do that? You gave her the worst morning and now she's going to have a bad day. And, and what did I do? I got on the phone and I talked to some other moms. I have this community and they weren't autism moms. They're just moms I know because I've learned, and that is a muscle that I've built of when I feel something, I immediately get it up and out. And it's not like people have big information to give me. I'm not necessarily looking for advice. It's just something about getting honest about what's inside and being heard and being seen that is profoundly healing, so that, I don't think we ever get cured of those mom things, but it's learning how to do it in a way that really keeps me from being held back.
There's so many great lessons. It's funny. I'm listening to these and it just shows how universal this is. Same lessons that I talk about in my book, Miracle Mindset, same stuff that came up when I went through both the bipolar and the brain injury, same stuff I think we all go through, whether it's autism, or sick kid or angry angry spouse, it's all that stuff. It's all, and the great thing is what you're showing is it can be learned. It's a muscle. You get better. And as you get better, life gets better. And so that's such a key takeaway. Now I want to ask you one quickie last question. I'm going to throw at you. And it's, you get to pick one thing, the one thing that makes the biggest difference in your life that you do every day. What is it? Prayer.
I don't mean to sound religious. I'm not. And prayer can be different things. Sometimes I need to cry, and that's liquid prayer. Sometimes it's sitting and just being quiet and connecting with myself. Sometimes it's literally praying to God, and really just talking and feeling heard in that way. But that's kind of my go-to because there isn't always going to be a person on the end of the phone. I mean, you hope there is, right? For me, sometimes prayer is going for a walk with my dog and just praying and being, kind of in communion that way with the outside. So I would say that's my biggest, JJ. That's my biggest go-to. And it's always, it never fails.
You're kind of a shining example of my line, you are stronger than you think, Susan. So I hugely appreciate it. And I want to send everybody who just wants to go a little deeper with you, and as you can see from listening or tell from listening to this, these are things that you can use in every aspect of your life. So when I send people to miraclemindset.com/Susan, actually wrong, JJVirgin.com/Susan, What can they get from you there?
I have a free download for you guys that is, it's about some of the principles, not really principles, tools that I use, that I still use, that I used when we were working with my son, that I still use. And they're about your whole family, all the different family relationships. So siblings, marriage, parenting, grandparents, all those different dynamics. And check it out. It's just things that I use that help me because, again, we all have special needs of one flavor of or another. And families, it's not easy being in a family. So, yeah, check it out and let me know what you think. There's some great stuff in there for you to try out.
Well, you've given tons of good takeaways throughout this interview. Just kind of, they're just now a part of you. And none of us are ever pros, but gosh, I always feel like the best place to learn the lessons is from someone who's gone through it themselves, right? Makes you an expert. So thank you so much for joining me. And again, I want to remind everybody, go to jjvirgin.com/Susan to grab more of that. These takeaways will apply wherever you are in your life. And thank you so much for joining me. Now, after the break, I'm going to be answering listeners' questions, so stay with me.
When you make a small change to something you do every day, the impact over time can be huge. And when it comes to breakfast, you don't want to blow it because your breakfast sets the pace for your entire day. That's why JJ created the all-in-one plant-based breakfast shake to start your day right. Whether you are a vegan, vegetarian, or just looking to consume more plant-based foods, this breakfast shake is for you. It comes in 3 delicious flavors, vanilla, chocolate, and chai, and helps give you sustained energy, cuts cravings, and can melt pounds from your waistline. Visit jjvirgin.com/products to shift your fat loss and energy into high gear today.
Welcome back. This is the time where I answer a listener's question. And today's question comes from Jane in Boston. And she says, JJ, I know you ate healthy while your son was in the hospital. I travel all the time. I want to know what you did because I need to do the same thing. So just like you heard in this interview, when all of this was going on, I knew that my health was more important than ever. So I was focusing on eating healthy, handling stress, keeping my exercise up, and sleep. And so I dialed those all in. And fortunately, they were already habits. And that's one of the key things. When you make these things habits, then it becomes way easier. They can become a framework to help keep you in balance, even when things get out of control. But what I did was I, of course, had my NutriBullet and my shakes. So I had my all-in-one shakes with me, and every day I started out with that. Once Grant woke up from the coma and got rid of his feeding tube, I brought that into the hospital, and I was feeding him too. But I would go over to Whole Foods 1 to 2 times a week and just stock up. I was staying in a little like residential suite type of thing, and I would just stock that fridge so I could bring things with me to the hospital every day, but also have things back in my room. I, of course, had my JJVirgin bars, so I had my JJVirgin bars and shakes. And worst case, man, I could always dig into those and live on those. Other things I used was grass-fed beef jerky. I love the Paleo Valley ones, those grass-fed beef sticks, and nuts. And honestly, this was just survival food. So I was doing what I needed to do. But then I would have wild salmon and chicken. I'd get all the cooked ones and put them in the fridge with salads. And I would eat those too. And fortunately, when people would come to the hospital, they'd bring me food. So that helped out a lot too. And I found a couple places right close by that had healthy takeout. And there are a couple places, you know, like you have to do the best that you can under the situation. But I think it's called Waba Grill, Chipotle, Baja Fresh. I find that one of the easiest places to eat healthy is Mexican because you can get veggies, fajita veggies and salad and black beans and guacamole and chicken. So I just did the best I could do. I stayed completely clean of the dairy and gluten and soy and corn because those really throw me under the bus, and I had no margin for error for getting inflamed or not being able to focus. And so part of it, the first part of that is saying, which I love, Jane, that you said, is how do I do this? You know, the first step is saying, I need to do this. I have to take care of myself so I can do what I need to do in life. And then figure out what you need to do. Again, shakes, bars, what stuff can you pack that's easy to travel with? Where around you close by are easy options? How can you set your fridge up so that when you get something that will last you for several days? And it all starts with that attitude. So with that attitude, set up your life for success, and then it will make it easy to do so. Now, if you'd like to submit a question, just head over to my Facebook page at JJVirgin Fan Club. And I have a favor to ask. I would so appreciate it if you could jump on Stitcher or iTunes and leave a review for me. It helps a bunch. And be sure to subscribe and share the show with your friends. This is JJVirgin signing off and reminding you to live courageously. Show up, step up. You are stronger than you think.